What if the biggest lie in your relationship wasn't uncovered by a private investigator, but by your car's Bluetooth? What if a marriage didn't end over a cheating text, but over a bottle of lotion? And what if the dream proposal wasn't the start of a fairy tale, but a eulogy for someone else? You're about to hear 5 stories, 5 truths exposed by moments so ordinary you'd almost miss them. You're about to meet Hannah, who just wanted a hot dog at a neighborhood barbecue, but accidentally detonated a full-blown relationship autopsy right there on the lawn. You'll stand with Emma at Tiffany's and watch the man she loves tear up. Not for her, but for the ring he once meant for another woman. You'll get in the car with Lily, only to hear a robotic voice announce, "Connected to my wife." The problem is, Lily isn't his wife. And that's just the start of a series of cruel loyalty tests she never signed up for. You'll witness Nora's harmless prank with lotion become the very excuse her husband needed to pack a bag and leave, covering up a web of lies more slippery than the lotion itself. And in our final story, you'll uncover a secret buried in a man's last words, a truth that changes everything for the woman he left behind. These aren't just stories about betrayal. They're warnings about the red flags wrapped in pretty paper, about the lies disguised as jokes, and about the explosive power that's unleashed when women start comparing notes and realize they've all been cast in the same scam. If you've ever felt like you were living in someone else's lie, stick around, you're in the right place. Story 1. He told me I dated him too early to tell his wife. I wasn't planning to destroy anyone's marriage. I just wanted a hot dog. But the moment I saw Roger standing next to his wife at our neighborhood barbecue, my mouth moved faster than my brain. "Oh hey, we used to date." And just like that, silence. You could hear the mustard drip. Her name was Carla, his wife, now standing between 2 versions of the same man. This is the story of how a backyard sausage turned into a full-blown relationship autopsy. It's a story about timelines that don't match, excuses that insult your intelligence, and what happens when women compare notes and realize they've all been cast in the same romantic scam. Without knowing it, you're about to meet Roger. Roger who claimed, technically, it wasn't cheating if the vows weren't said yet. Roger who didn't see it coming when Carla and I turned a betrayal into a sisterhood, and then turned that into a TikTok series. And if you've ever accidentally stumbled into someone else's secrets just by telling your truth, you'll get it. Because sometimes the truth doesn't need to be shouted. It just needs to be said once. It was supposed to be just a Saturday. Just hot dogs, sunshine, and awkward small talk with neighbors you only half remembered. Hannah showed up to the barbecue in flip-flops and 0 emotional armor. She was there for grilled food, not a grilled past. But fate or bad timing had other plans. As Carla proudly introduced her husband to the group, Hannah turned, smiled, and said with the innocence of someone who absolutely did not read the room, "Oh hey, we used to date." 5 words. That's all it took. Carla blinked, Roger froze like a broken GIF, and the ketchup bottle slipped from someone's hand. No one breathed for a full second. It wasn't a scream. It wasn't a slap. Just a phrase tossed into the air like it meant nothing, until it meant everything. Let's break it down. We used to date. That could mean anything and everything. A high school crush, a 3-week thing, a one-time dinner. But Hannah said it with the kind of ease that made it sound recent. Relevant. Real. Too recent for Roger's version of the story. This wasn't a confrontation. It was a collision. An emotional fender-bender on the suburban driveway of truth. Nobody expected it, but suddenly everyone had front-row seats. So what's the lesson here? Sometimes, the most explosive truths don't arrive with fireworks. They arrive in casual sentences under a party tent over paper plates. And in that split second, Hannah became that girl. Not because she meant to ruin anything, but because she didn't know she was holding a grenade until she pulled the pin. Some might ask, was it on purpose? Others might say she had every right, but no one walks away from a moment like that unchanged. And Carla, she didn't scream, she didn't storm off. She just smiled and said, "You two know each other how." And that is where things really started to unravel. Silence doesn't always scream. Sometimes it just sits there. Thick, uncomfortable, like mayo left out too long in the sun, technically edible, but nobody's touching it. Carla's voice was steady when she asked the question. You two know each other how? Polite, almost curious. But the way her smile didn't quite reach her eyes, that was the giveaway. That smile had a timer on it. Hannah blinked. She wasn't sure what was happening, only that something was. She looked at Roger, hoping he'd say something that made sense of it all. He did not. Roger laughed. The worst kind of laugh, high-pitched, strained, desperate. The dating thing, it was a long time ago, barely even a thing. Right, Hannah? Now Hannah was in it, still holding her plate, still standing like she hadn't just turned a neighborhood barbecue into a live taping of Who Wants to Be Emotionally Unprepared. I mean, yeah, it was a while back, she said, slow and careful, like navigating a minefield she hadn't realized she stepped into. But I think we went out for, 4 or 5 months. Roger coughed, more like 2. Carla didn't flinch. She just took a sip of her wine, never breaking eye contact. Oh, she said, that's interesting. In that moment, 3 stories were happening at once. Hannah was mentally reviewing every text thread from 2019, wondering if she still had receipts. Roger was speed-running damage control, rewriting history like it was a resume. And Carla was calculating, not yelling, not confronting, just filing information, the way women do when they're quietly building a case. Let's be honest, this is the part where the audience starts choosing sides. Was Hannah being passive-aggressive? Did she truly not know Roger was married? Was that little "we used to date" a casual mention or a strategic torpedo? Because here's the thing about etiquette in the suburbs, you can wear pastels. You can bring deviled eggs, but one wrong sentence can nuke an entire patio party. And now, the question hanging over the grill wasn't whether the burgers were medium rare. It was whether Roger's marriage was cooked too. What Carla did next wasn't loud, but it was smart. And it started with one question she didn't ask out loud, but every woman watching would. If he's lying about this, what else has he lied about? Cue suspicion. Cue timeline replays. Cue mental screenshots of every moment that didn't feel quite right. And that's exactly where we're going next. That night, Carla didn't scream. She didn't throw a wine glass or flip a table. She just went home and opened her notes app. She wasn't looking for drama. She was looking for math, because the thing about betrayal isn't just that it hurts, it insults your intelligence. Roger had always said they met in the spring of 2018, started dating late that summer, moved in by New Year's Eve. Cute story, until Hannah casually mentioned they'd dated until September of 2019. Not back in college, not years ago, but a clean overlap. Months into what was supposed to be a monogamous, building toward marriage love story. Carla started tracing the edges. They went to that beach trip in July 2019. He disappeared one weekend in August, claimed it was a guy's cabin trip. She remembered thinking, strange he didn't post a single photo. Hannah's words replayed on loop. Yeah, I think it was 4, 5 months. That would have included July and August, and maybe even Labor Day. The cracks weren't just forming, they were already spreading underfoot. Here, what no one tells you about lies, you don't need a confession to start unraveling them. You just need one date that doesn't fit. That's when the brain stops trusting and the gut takes over. You start remembering all the things you once chose to forget. The missing texts, the muted phone, the sudden gym membership that never actually included any sweat. If you were Carla, sitting on the edge of your bed, staring at the man who said he loved you first in October 2018. What would you do, realizing another woman may have heard those same words, just months later? Would you confront him? Would you dig deeper? Or would you tell yourself you're probably just overthinking it again, because that's what he always said? But Carla didn't go quiet. She got curious. And what she found next would make the neighborhood barbecue look like a dress rehearsal. Hannah sat in her kitchen, sipping a glass of red that didn't taste quite as relaxing as usual. It's funny how memory works. You don't notice the red flags when you're busy hanging fairy lights around them. But once the truth peeks through the cracks, every little detail starts screaming in hindsight. Roger had a thing for business trips, always during holidays. Memorial Day, gone. 4th of July, out of town. He claimed it was Q3 pressure or executive restructuring. Hannah used to nod like she understood. Now she realizes she never even knew what company he worked for. Then there was the phone. He always left it in the garage when they hung out, said he wanted to be present. At the time, she thought it was romantic. Now, it felt like tech-assisted cheating, and the pictures, more accurately, the lack of them. They dated for months, but Roger never posted a single photo of them together. No tags, no stories, just sunsets, steaks, and selfies that made him look perpetually single. Back then, Hannah chalked it up to privacy. Now she realized it was more like a cover story. Why do we miss the signs? Because in the honeymoon haze, everything is flattering. Busy is ambitious. Private is mysterious. Unavailable is sexy. But with distance and a glass of wine, Hannah could finally admit it. She'd confused charm for character. And red flags for red roses. If she'd asked one more question, if she'd followed one tiny thread, would any of this have happened? Maybe. Maybe not. But here's what she knew now. Sometimes, love isn't blind. It's just really good at closing one eye when it wants to believe. And out there, in a quiet group chat, someone else was opening both eyes wide. Carla didn't scream. She didn't throw his clothes onto the lawn or dramatically storm out like a made-for-TV movie. She opened WhatsApp, created a group, named it Roger Audit Committee. 4 women, 2 hours, 1 mission. Find the truth and receipts. Because if you've ever underestimated what a group chat of mildly suspicious women can do, you haven't been paying attention. While Roger slept soundly next to her, probably dreaming of plausible deniability, Carla and her crew were digging through social media like seasoned forensic analysts. They scrolled through old tags, hunted for deleted comments, and reverse-searched Instagram handles from blurry backgrounds in random photos. One friend found a photo of Roger at a ski lodge, allegedly alone. But zoom in. There's a shadow, long hair, and the corner of a pink glove. Another located a restaurant check-in tagged Date Night 2 Hearts. On the same night, Roger claimed he was at a work conference. Then came the jackpot: 2 women, 2 different cities, both of whom had dated Roger during overlapping months. Both believed they were in exclusive relationships. Both had been told, wait for it, I'm just not ready to tell people about us yet. One of them even had an old voice memo saved. Roger saying, "You're the only person who really gets me." Verbatim, Carla played it out loud in the group chat. Silence. Then, he said the exact same thing to me. That's when the group chat exploded. With screenshots, with laughter, with collective realization, Roger hadn't just been sloppy, he'd been lazy. Because here's a rule every woman knows but rarely says out loud. If something feels off, it usually is. And when you connect the dots with other women, those little off moments turn into full-blown timelines. As one of Carla's friends texted, "Female group chat is stronger than the CIA. We don't need subpoenas. We have intuition and unlimited Wi-Fi." The takeaway: truth loves company. And when women compare stories, it's not drama. It's data collection. Now that Carla had more than suspicions, she had evidence. There was only one thing left to do: confront him, face to face, on neutral territory. And Roger? He had no idea his Costco run was about to turn into cross-examination. If Betrayal had a stage, this one had shopping carts. Carla picked the meeting spot: neutral, public, unlikely to end in property damage, Costco parking lot at 3 p.m. on a Tuesday. Roger thought they were just grabbing bulk hummus. Hannah knew better. She waited near the back of the lot, arms crossed, already regretting her flats. Roger arrived late, all smiles and clueless charm. Carla waved him over with a look that said, "You're not ready for this." "Thanks for coming," she said. "Both of you." Roger's smile faltered. Both. That's when he saw Hannah, and that's when the sweating began. Carla pulled out her phone, not to record, just to reference. "I want to go over some dates," she said. Calm, controlled, CEO energy. Roger laughed nervously. "This feels a little dramatic." Carla didn't blink. "Then you might want to sit down." She laid out the timeline. The trips, the texts, the ski lodge shadow. Each fact landed like a well-aimed shopping cart to the ankles. Roger's defense. He sighed, ran a hand through his hair like a man on trial for a crime he didn't think counted. Okay, look. Technically, it wasn't cheating. I wasn't married yet. Silence, Hannah blinked. Wait, so the vows are the start line. Everything before that's just open season. Roger nodded, as if logic was his shield. Commitment means marriage, right? Carla tilted her head. You told me you loved me, you asked me to move in, you introduced me to your mother. But I guess none of that counts until there's paperwork. Roger shrugged. People interpret relationships differently. Ah, the soft gaslight. Make it about semantics, blur the lines, cast confusion where there was once clarity. Classic move. Shift blame to the expectations. Not the behavior, not the lies, just the interpretation of the lies. And that's when Carla stood fully upright, not just in posture, but in purpose. Let me be clear, she said. You didn't cheat because we weren't married. You cheated because you made promises you never intended to keep. And you lied because the truth would have cost you attention. The air stilled. Costco carts rolled by, blissfully unaware that aisle 4 had nothing on this kind of confrontation. Roger didn't respond. Because when the logic falls apart, silence is the last defense. For viewers, it was the Dateline moment. No gunshots, no dramatic music. Just facts, spoken plainly, landing with the weight of 3 broken timelines. And in that parking lot, something finally snapped, not loudly, but with finality. The man who played both sides was now standing alone. While the women he thought he'd fooled were about to walk away, not as rivals, but something far more dangerous. Allies. After the Costco confrontation, Roger didn't disappear. He pivoted into apology mode. Not the genuine, soul-searching kind, the other kind. The let me say just enough to save face without actually owning anything kind. It started with a text to Hannah. I never meant to hurt anyone. I just didn't know how to handle what we had. What we had, like their relationship, was a leaky faucet, unfortunate but not his fault. Then came the message to Carla. I just wanted peace. I've been under a lot of pressure. And honestly, this whole thing got blown way out of proportion. Ah yes, the holy trinity of the non-apology apology. I never meant intent over impact. I just wanted peace, centering his own comfort. Everyone's overreacting, delegitimizing their pain. Roger didn't apologize for what he did. He apologized for how uncomfortable it had become. Big difference. It's like handing someone a bouquet of I'm sorry, balloons filled with nothing but helium and gaslighting. He framed it like a misunderstanding. Like Hannah and Carla had different expectations, and poor Roger just got tangled in their emotions. He even tried the classic, men don't always express themselves the right way. That doesn't make us bad people. Translation, hold me accountable and you're attacking my gender. But here's the thing, both Hannah and Carla had grown past the point of needing his closure. Because at some point, you realize an apology isn't about healing. It's about power. And Roger wasn't offering reconciliation, he was bargaining for reputation. That's what makes a non-apology so slippery. It sounds remorseful, but it dodges the core truth. The hurt wasn't accidental, it was strategic. He wasn't confused, he was calculating. And both women, from different ends of the same story, came to the same conclusion. Forgiveness doesn't require a performance, and accountability can't be outsourced. So they left his messages on read, not out of spite, but because some apologies deserve no answer, just distance. And in that distance, something unexpected happened. The woman he thought he'd played against each other, they started talking, and not about him, but about how to turn their mess into something meaningful. It didn't happen overnight. At first, Carla and Hannah exchanged cautious texts, short sentences, safe topics. They were 2 women who had once dated the same man, not exactly the foundation of a friendship. But something unexpected grew in the cracks. Not just shared betrayal, shared clarity. Late one night, after a back and forth about how Roger used the same Spotify playlists on different dates, Carla sent, he told me he hated sushi. Hannah replied, he took me to Nabu, twice. And just like that they laughed, not bitter, not broken, just done blaming themselves. Done thinking they were the problem, so they built something, a TikTok series. They called it The X-Files. Each video tackled a different red flag. Business trips with no receipts. Phones that never leave the glove compartment. Men who say, "We're not exclusive, but I feel exclusive with you." They didn't name names. They didn't need to. The stories spoke for themselves and spoke to millions. Comments flooded in. "This happened to me too. I thought I was the only one. You just explained my last 3 relationships better than my therapist." And through that little corner of the internet, Carla and Hannah found something deeper than revenge. Relief, laughter, and sisterhood, not because they had the same past, but because they refused to carry it alone anymore. Their friendship wasn't perfect, but it was real. The kind that gets built not in spite of the mess, but through it, because sometimes your heartbreak doesn't isolate you, it connects you. And that's what The X-Files became. Not a burn book, but a blueprint for healing, for warning, for solidarity. Because here's the truth. Your story isn't embarrassing. It's powerful. And when you share it, you give someone else permission to stop apologizing for theirs. Carla and Hannah, they didn't just get over Roger. They got louder than him. Together, there was no grand revenge, no viral takedown, no flaming pile of Roger's belongings on a front lawn set to Taylor Swift. Just 2 women, telling the truth, and that was enough. Carla never confronted him again. Hannah didn't text back. Roger was left to scroll TikTok in silence, realizing a bit too late that some of those stories sounded familiar, suspiciously so, but no names were mentioned. No direct callouts, just a series of stories wrapped in wit and empathy, resonating with thousands. Because the real burn wasn't public humiliation, it was private irrelevance. He stopped being the center of their lives and became a cautionary tale. And maybe, just maybe, that's worse than any shouted accusation. Because Roger thought he was orchestrating a game, managing emotions, juggling timelines, keeping all the plates spinning. But the thing about games is, if you lie to the players, you lose control of the ending. As Carla once put it, with the clarity of someone who no longer flinches at the word gaslight, Roger thought he was playing us. He just played himself. There's something quietly devastating about that realization. That the worst part isn't the betrayal, it's being underestimated. Being treated like someone too fragile, too distracted, too nice to notice. But they noticed. They connected the dots. And instead of imploding, they expanded into truth-tellers, into friends, into voices for others still stuck in the confusion phase. Because not every story needs a villain takedown. Sometimes the villain does it for you by showing exactly who they are. And that's where this ends. Not with a bang, but with 2 women walking away stronger. While Roger stands alone, still trying to rewrite a version of the past no one's interested in hearing. Like a final note in a piano ballad, soft but resolute. Closure without noise, just truth. 10. Tell us your story. Sometimes the truth doesn't explode. It slips out of your mouth without warning, like Hannah's 5 accidental words at a barbecue. And in that one moment, the curtain lifts. The lies unravel, and everything changes. What began as a casual neighborhood afternoon ended in something far deeper. 2 women, both misled, 1 moment of honesty. A mess, yes, but also a mirror. And from it, a transformation. We watched Carla go from calm to calculated, Hannah from uncertain to unfiltered, and Roger from center stage to background static. This wasn't a story about revenge, it was about recognition. Of patterns, of power. Of the strength we forget we have until someone tries to play us. They didn't burn bridges. They built something better. A platform, a connection, a sisterhood born not from spite, but from shared clarity. And now, we turn to you. Have you ever said something that cracked everything open, on accident, or maybe, deep down, on purpose? Did a single moment reveal more than years of pretending ever could? We get it. You're not the only one who's been made to feel naive, or dramatic, or too sensitive for noticing what no one wanted to admit. That's why we're here. This space is yours, too. Tell us your story. Use the pinned anonymous link in the comments. No names, no pressure, just your truth held with care. And for every 1,000 views this video receives, we'll donate $1 to organizations that support people rebuilding after emotional betrayal. Because your story isn't just content, it's community. And healing doesn't happen in silence, it happens when we speak and someone else nods and says, "Same." So subscribe if you haven't yet. Stick around, we have more stories. More red flags decoded. More laughter, more healing, more voices rising together. Because this isn't just a video. It's a reminder you're not alone, and you never were. Story 2, he cried for his ex while shopping for my ring. What would you do if your boyfriend cried, not during the proposal, but while picking out the ring? I was standing next to Zach at Tiffany's, thinking this was our moment. But when the jeweler handed him a vintage-cut diamond, he froze. His eyes welled up. And he whispered, "She used to love this design." That's when I realized this proposal wasn't really about me. It was about her. This is the story of how I almost said yes to a man who was still emotionally married to his past. Of how grief can wear a nice suit and hold a ring box. Of how I spent 3 months living with a man who wasn't fully present, while he mourned someone who'd already moved on. It's a story that involves a hidden journal, a public breakup at a coffee shop, a viral TikTok by a barista named Luna, and a hard truth: sometimes love isn't healing, it's hiding. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is not wear the ring. If you've ever felt like someone's second choice, or like you were loving someone who hadn't let go, you're not alone. We believe everyone has a story worth telling. Maybe even the one you've never said out loud. Tell yours anonymously through the link in the comments. We'll share it in a future video, respectfully, honestly, and always anonymously. And for every 1,000 views, we'll donate $1 to support real people rebuilding after heartbreak. Because your story could be the reason someone else finds their strength. It was supposed to be the beginning of forever. Emma and Zach, standing under the soft lighting of Tiffany's, surrounded by velvet boxes and hopeful whispers. It was one of those moments you imagine as a kid, where the person you love looks at you like there's no one else in the room. Except Zach wasn't looking at Emma, he was staring at a ring. A vintage-style engagement ring, delicate and classic. The jeweler handed it to him with a smile, but Zach didn't smile back. He blinked hard. His grip tightened. And then he said it, quietly, almost like he forgot Emma was standing right there. "She used to love this design." That's when everything cracked. It wasn't just the words, it was how he said them. Soft, nostalgic. Like he was holding something more than a ring, like he was holding a memory that hadn't let him go. Emma felt the shift instantly. The store was warm, but she went cold, because deep down she knew that wasn't about her. That ring wasn't hers, it was hers. Someone else's. Someone who still lived in the spaces Zach didn't talk about. And here's the thing no one tells you: sometimes you're not competing with a person, you're competing with a past, with a ghost in a dress that still fits in his imagination, with a what if that refuses to move out of his heart. The MC put it best. Wait, are you proposing to Emma or Emily? That moment wasn't just awkward. It was a red flag wrapped in a velvet box. Because love can't grow in the shadow of someone else's goodbye. If you've ever felt like your relationship had a third wheel, and that wheel was a memory, you're not crazy. You're seeing something real. Emma did too. She just didn't know it was only the beginning. And when your present is haunted by someone else's past, what happens next might say everything about the future. When grief for an ex becomes the third person in your relationship. After the Tiffany's incident, Emma thought maybe it was just a slip, a weird moment, an emotional glitch. But then came the playlists. Zach started listening to old songs, their songs, not Emma's, not theirs. Just 2014 heartbreak pop on repeat. He stopped laughing at her jokes, stopped planning anything fun. He'd stay up late staring at his phone, scrolling through social media like he was waiting for a ghost to DM him back. And in the morning, he'd say he was just tired. Emma tried to be understanding. She told herself, he's just processing, it's normal, people have histories. But it felt less like history, and more like she was living inside someone else's unfinished story. Zach wasn't angry. He wasn't mean. He was just absent, like his body showed up, but the rest of him had RSVP'd to someone else's engagement. And that's when it hit her. She wasn't dating a man. She was dating a man still in mourning. It's easy to spot the dramatic red flags: shouting, cheating, lying. Harder to name the quiet ones: the silence, the playlist, the way he smiles at nothing, remembering something you'll never be a part of. Because when someone hasn't found closure, it doesn't just affect them. It affects you. It creeps into the way they hold your hand, the way they hesitate before saying "I love you," the way they flinch when you bring up the future. Grief for an ex isn't just sadness, it's a third presence in the room. It makes dinner feel crowded. It makes love feel like a comparison test you never agreed to take. Emma tried, she stayed. But when you're in love with someone who's still haunted, you start to disappear too. And sometimes, the most painful kind of loneliness is when the person you're with is already somewhere else. If she loved this ring, why am I here? They went back. Because Zach said he wanted to make things right. He wanted to try again, to really choose a ring, this time for Emma. Emma agreed, hoping this would be a turning point. She told herself, he's finally ready to move forward. Maybe the awkward moment before was just nerves. Hope has a funny way of making you forgive too quickly. They stood together at the counter. The jeweler pulled out a tray of elegant, vintage-style rings. Zach stared at one of them longer than the rest, picked it up slowly, turned it in his hand like it held a secret, and then, with his voice barely above a whisper, he said, "She used to love this one." The jeweler froze mid-sentence. Emma blinked. Her heart didn't break, it slipped, like a step missed on a staircase you thought was solid. She watched as Zach's eyes got glassy. He rubbed his thumb across the ring like he was saying goodbye to someone who wasn't there. This wasn't a proposal, it was a eulogy. And the worst part, he didn't even notice. Emma said nothing, not in that moment. Because when someone is so wrapped up in their past, they can't see the damage they're doing in the present. The MC said it best. This wasn't a ring for the woman he loved, it was a monument to the one who left. Or as we like to say, this wasn't a proposal. It was an unfinished goodbye dressed in diamonds. And here's the quiet heartbreak people don't talk about. When you're standing in front of a man, in a moment that's supposed to be about you, and he's still choosing her, not with words, but with tears and a ring, and silence so loud it says everything. I wasn't his forever, I was his instead. Emma couldn't shake the question anymore. Was this love or just convenient timing? She started replaying their relationship, not like a highlight reel, but like a puzzle. All the sweet moments suddenly had a shadow behind them. The way Zach clung to her in the beginning was that passion or panic. The way he said, "You make me feel normal again," was that love or relief, because there's a difference between a healing relationship and a hiding place. Healing love says, "I've done the work, I'm ready for something new." Rebound love says, "Please don't make me sit with this pain." One builds, the other buries. Emma realized she had become a buffer, an emotional band-aid. She wasn't the dream. She was the distraction from the dream that died. And let's be honest, there's nothing lonelier than being with someone who only wants you because you're not someone else. That's when the thought hit her like a truth she didn't want to say out loud. I'm not the love of his life. I'm the break between chapters. And maybe you've been there too. When you start wondering if you were loved. Or just needed. When you realize someone didn't choose you, they chose not being alone. So let's ask the hard question together. Have you ever been someone's instead? Someone S close enough. Someone S, maybe this will make the pain go away. Because if you have, you know, it doesn't matter how perfect you are. You can't win a race where the finish line is still staring backward. And Emma, she was starting to realize. She didn't want to be a substitute. She wanted to be the only name in the sentence. Some people find old movie tickets or socks under the bed. Emma found a journal. Tucked in a shoebox behind winter clothes Zach hadn't touched since they moved in together. At first, she thought it was just an old sketchbook. Zach used to doodle when he was stressed, but when she flipped through the pages, she found something else. Plans, timelines, heartbreak, meticulously documented. It started off like reflective writing, but a few pages in, it shifted. A full page titled, "If She Leaves HIM." Below that, a bulleted list. Wait 3 weeks. Reach out with casual message. Mention Paris trip. Don't rush. Let her come to you. Be the version she remembers, not the one who lost her. And then, scrawled across the bottom in Zach's handwriting, if she breaks up, I'll have another chance. Emma stared at the ink until it blurred. Not from smudges. From tears, this wasn't grief. This was strategy. She wasn't dating a man who was healing. She was dating someone rehearsing a comeback tour with someone else as the headliner. It didn't matter that the journal was old or that maybe he'd moved past it. What mattered was, while she had been planning a life with him, he had been planning for someone else's return. It's the kind of betrayal that doesn't scream, it whispers. It makes you question your memories, your gut, your worth. Emma didn't feel angry. She felt erased. Later, when she shared this story online, one Reddit comment nailed it. That's not love. That's delusion wrapped in desperation. Because love doesn't come with contingency plans, and no one deserves to be someone else's backup strategy in case fate doesn't deliver. Emma closed the journal. And with it, the version of their story she thought she was living. When Zach finally dropped to one knee, Emma didn't cry. She didn't gasp. She didn't even blink. She just said yes. Not because she was overwhelmed with joy, but because, in that moment, saying no felt like lighting a match in a room full of emotional gasoline. Zach was shaking. He looked fragile, not in a sweet way, but in a please don't break me again kind of way. And Emma, being who she is, chose to be kind. She chose silence over scene, peace over truth, and said the most complicated word in the English language, yes. She slipped the ring into her purse, not onto her finger, and began making a quiet plan for a graceful exit. She didn't want revenge. She didn't want to humiliate him. She just wanted to leave with her dignity still intact. And here's the thing we don't talk about enough. Sometimes people say yes, not because they want the life they're being offered, but because they don't want to deal with the fallout of refusing it. That kind of yes is heavy. It's the kind of yes that makes you wake up at 3 a.m. staring at the ceiling, wondering when exactly you stopped choosing yourself. Emma said yes because it was easier than watching Zach fall apart. But every time she looked at that ring, she didn't see a future. She saw a delay, a pause button on her own truth. There are so many people, especially women, who have nodded through a moment that should have been sacred, just to avoid becoming the villain in someone else's heartbreak story. But here's the truth. Protecting someone else's feelings at the cost of your own isn't noble. It's slow self-destruction. Emma knew it, and that knowledge became her quiet power. She wasn't going to run, she was going to walk away well. And as you'll soon see, when the final moment came, it was public, unfiltered, and unforgettable. Emma chose a coffee shop, not because she wanted witnesses, but because she knew she'd need the structure, the noise, the casual clinking of cups and milk steamers, and soft indie music to hold the edges of what she was about to do. She picked a table near the window. 2 chairs, no drama, just daylight and truth. Zach arrived late, looking like a man who hadn't slept again. Emma offered a small smile, not to soften the blow, but to honor what they had been, or what she thought they were. She started gently, explaining how she didn't feel chosen, how she had become a placeholder, how love shouldn't feel like living in someone else's draft folder. Zach listened. He nodded. He even reached for her hand. Then he broke. Tears welled up. His voice cracked. And through it all, he said the one thing that confirmed everything Emma had feared. I thought Emily and I would have another shot. Emily, not Emma. She didn't flinch, she didn't scream. She just pulled her hand back, folded it into her lap, and looked him in the eyes. If she's still your everything, she said, why am I even here? It wasn't cruel, it wasn't dramatic, it was just honest. The table next to them had gone quiet. A barista paused mid-pour. But Emma felt calm, because for the first time, everything made sense. This wasn't a tragic ending. It was a long overdue correction. Love can survive many things, but it cannot survive being second place in someone's heart. And sometimes, closure doesn't come in the form of understanding. It comes in the form of finally being willing to walk away from confusion. Emma stood up, left the ring on the table, and walked out, not angry, not broken, just done. Her name was Luna. She wasn't part of the story, at least not at first. She was just a barista working the afternoon shift, trying to get through the rush with oat milk orders and a temperamental espresso machine. Until she noticed them. A couple by the window, one crying, one quiet. She didn't mean to listen. But you don't have to try when a name like Emily drops into a breakup like a bomb in the middle of a crowded cafe. Luna didn't judge. She watched. She wiped the counter slowly. She noticed the ring left behind, the posture of a woman who was done, the kind of done that doesn't need an argument. That night, Luna did what any 20-something with a TikTok and a wild afternoon would do. She posted about it. Of course, she changed names. Of course, she blurred faces. But the way she told it, it was magic, not in a gossipy way. In a here's the kind of woman I want to grow up to be way. She called Emma window girl. And Zach, she called him the guy who said the wrong name. The video blew up. Thousands of comments poured in. People weren't mocking, they were cheering. Not for the heartbreak, but for the bravery, the stillness. The quiet mic drop of a woman choosing peace over performance. And that's the wild thing about the internet. Sometimes, the story isn't told by the person who lived it. Sometimes it spreads because someone near it, someone who felt it in the air, knew that what they saw mattered. The power of Luna's post wasn't in the drama, it was in the dignity. Because when strangers start telling your story with more respect than the person you loved, that says everything. Looking back, Emma could see it clearly. It wasn't just one moment at Tiffany's, or the journal under the bed, or the slip of a name in a coffee shop. It was all of it. From the beginning, the way Zach clung to her like she was a life raft, the way he rushed into "I love you" before knowing what she even liked on her pizza, the way he talked about healing without ever doing the work. There were signs, but love has a way of putting rose-colored tape over the red flags. Emma didn't miss the truth. She chose to delay it, because the heart is hopeful. Because we want to believe that being patient is noble, that time will fix what love can't reach. But here's what she knows now. You can't build a future with someone who's still building altars to the past. Love based on potential is a gamble. Love based on presence is a promise. And Zach, he wasn't present. He was projecting, trying to mold Emma into the version of closure he never got, trying to turn her into a soft landing for a crash he never processed. And she, like so many of us, thought that maybe, just maybe, if she loved hard enough, waited long enough, stayed quiet long enough, he'd finally choose her fully. But being a maybe someday is not a love story. It's a delay tactic dressed up as devotion. So here's the message Emma wants you to hear. You are not a placeholder. You are not someone's emotional crutch. You are not the good enough for now version of someone else's dream. No one is worth staying for if they're still living in the arms of a memory. And the moment you stop asking, why can't I be enough? And start saying, why am I still here? That's the beginning of your real story. This story didn't end with fireworks. No dramatic storm out, no final kiss, no last-minute chase to the airport. It ended in a coffee shop with a woman walking away, not because she didn't love him, but because she finally loved herself more. Emma was never the villain. She was just the wrong chapter in a book Zach wasn't finished reading. From the first tear over a ring meant for someone else, to 3 months of mourning, what could have been, to a journal that read more like a strategy guide than a love letter, to the moment he said the wrong name, out loud, hoping she wouldn't notice. But she did. And in that quiet realization, Emma gave us something powerful, a reminder that love is not about filling space. It's about showing up whole, honest, and present, because real love is a choice, not a strategy, not a plan B, not a soft place to land when the past won't text you back. And if your story starts with someone else's heartbreak, you have every right to rewrite the ending. If their tears are still falling for someone else, let them. You weren't meant to be their tissue. You were meant to be somebody's piece. We know this story hit home for many, because too many people have been the rebound, the backup plan, the quiet fix. But you are not a repair shop for broken hearts that won't heal. So now it's your turn. Have you ever felt like someone's rebound, or worse, like their emotional band-aid? Tell us. Your story matters. Share it anonymously through the pinned link in the comments. And for every 1,000 views, we'll donate $1 to therapy programs supporting those recovering from emotional manipulation and heartbreak. Because healing begins the moment your voice is heard. And we'll be right here, listening. Stay tuned. Your story might just be the one that helps someone else leave the wrong table and wait for the love that doesn't flinch. Story 3, the Bluetooth said my wife, I'm not his wife. It started with a Bluetooth. Not a fight, not a red flag, just a moment so tiny you'd almost miss it unless you were listening. Lily gets into her boyfriend's car. The engine hums to life, the stereo flickers on, and a robotic voice says, connected to my wife. Now here's the thing, Lily isn't married, and she definitely isn't his wife. That's when everything started to feel off, like she was in someone else's story and she hadn't read the script. When she asked, he laughed. It's just a prank, babe. As if calling someone your wife by accident is funny. As if trust is a game you win by lying well enough. But it didn't stop there. Fake power outages, lost wallets. Coincidental run-ins with his ex turns out Lily hadn't been dating a boyfriend, she'd been dating a test she never signed up for. This story isn't about Bluetooths or jokes gone wrong. It's about the quiet ways people try to control each other and dress it up as love. It's about how care can become control. How some people use trust like a trap. And how Lily walked away, not because she failed the test, but because she finally passed her own. And we're not just telling her story today. We're talking about gaslighting, emotional tests, real trust, and what love looks like when it's not trying to trick you into staying. Because maybe you've been there too. Maybe you've been tested without knowing. Maybe you're still trying to figure out if what you felt was love or just a really well-decorated red flag. We've got you. And if you've got a story about love, loss, or a Bluetooth that said too much, tell us. Share it anonymously through the pinned link in the comments. For every 1,000 views this video gets, we'll donate $1 to mental health and support programs for people healing from emotional manipulation. Because your story matters, and someone out there is waiting to hear it. Lily wasn't looking for trouble that day. She was just getting into her boyfriend's car, thinking about lunch, maybe a playlist, maybe holding his hand at a red light. You know, normal couple stuff. And then the Bluetooth spoke. Connected to my wife. It was one of those moments where your brain does a little double take. Because Lily's not married, and more importantly, she's not his wife. She laughs awkwardly. Who's my wife? He chuckles, it's just what I named the device. Funny, right? Was it? Maybe. Until you remember that naming your Bluetooth device, my wife, when you don't have one is oddly specific. It's not like naming it iPhone or car audio. It's a label, a role, a silent announcement every time the car turns on. So Lily did what most of us would do, she let it go. For a minute. She told herself maybe he just has a weird sense of humor. Maybe I'm being dramatic. Maybe it's not that deep. But something about it kept buzzing in her head. Because it didn't feel like a joke, it felt like a signal. A signal that this relationship had roles she didn't agree to. That maybe she was already being put in a position without being asked. And here's where it gets real. A name isn't just a name. It's intention, it's identity. And sometimes, it's the first breadcrumb in a trail of behaviors that don't look like red flags until you're too far in to turn around. The truth is, we're taught to laugh off little things, to not make it a big deal, to trust before we understand. But sometimes the smallest details are the loudest messages. And in Lily's case, the Bluetooth didn't just say, my wife. It whispered something else. This man plays roles and scripts them without telling you. And Lily wasn't the only one with a role she didn't audition for. Turns out, the Bluetooth moment was just the opening scene. The first clue in a bigger pattern. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. When Lily asked about the Bluetooth, he didn't miss a beat. It's just a prank, babe. Said with that signature, grin guys use when they want to seem clever instead of accountable. Like he expected her to roll her eyes, punch his arm, and laugh along. Except she didn't. Because here's the thing about pranks, real ones, the kind people actually enjoy, they're supposed to be funny for everyone involved. Not confusing, not unsettling, and definitely not a slow descent into emotional whiplash. Lily didn't find it funny. She found it weird. And when she didn't laugh, he didn't apologize, he doubled down. You're overthinking. You're too sensitive, it was just a joke. That's when something shifted. Because now the issue wasn't the prank, it was her reaction to it. And that, right there, is how gaslighting often begins. Not with shouting or manipulation, so obvious it comes with a warning label, but with a smile, a shrug, and a subtle rewriting of what just happened. Suddenly, it's not about what he did. It's about how she can't take a joke. Let's break this down. A prank requires shared context, consent, and usually a camera angle. It's meant to surprise, not destabilize. But when someone's feelings are dismissed as too much, when the goal of the joke is to see how you react under stress, and when you're made to question whether your discomfort is even valid, that's not a prank anymore. That's performance testing. That's gaslighting with a punchline, and let's be real. You're not Mr. Beast, sit down. You don't get to run emotional experiments and call them content, not when the person on the other end didn't sign up for the show. Because the truth is, humor doesn't erase harm, and love doesn't come with hidden cameras. What Lily didn't know yet was this wasn't a one-time thing. It was part of a pattern. And it wasn't the last test she'd unknowingly be a part of. After the Bluetooth moment, Lily couldn't stop replaying things. Not just the name on the screen, everything. The little weird moments she had brushed off. The coincidences that suddenly didn't feel so coincidental. Like that night a few weeks in, when the power mysteriously went out at his place. They lit candles. He said it was kind of romantic. Later, she found out the circuit breaker had been flipped on purpose. Or the time he lost his wallet at dinner. He patted his pockets dramatically, sighed, and asked, "Would you still stay if I had nothing?" She thought he was just flustered. Turns out he was fishing, not for money, but for loyalty. Then came the surprise encounter with his ex, at the same grocery store, at the same time. She remembered how his eyes lit up when he saw the two of them awkwardly shake hands, and how on the way home he asked, "You didn't seem jealous. Does that mean you don't care?" That's when it clicked. These weren't random events. They were experiments, not conversations, not expressions of love or vulnerability. Tests, quiet little tests to see if she would pass. And what was the passing grade exactly? Stay calm when things feel off. Give money when he's broke. Get territorial when another woman shows up. It made her wonder. Was he ever just being with her? Or was he always collecting data? Because if love is a quiz, only the best liars get A+. And Lily wasn't trying to be valedictorian in someone else's relationship lab. Here's the hard truth. You don't have to rig situations to see someone's heart. You just have to pay attention when they show it. And if you need to create chaos to measure commitment, what you're building isn't love, it's a performance. And Lily was starting to realize she'd been cast in a role she didn't audition for. But she wouldn't stay on set for long. He told her it was because he cared. "I just wanted to know you really love me." And on the surface, that sounds sweet, right? Like something you'd read on a Valentine's Day card. Until you realize, he only said it after he faked a power outage, pretended to lose his wallet, and staged a run-in with his ex. That's not care, that's a setup. Because love doesn't need tricks to reveal itself. It shows up in how someone listens when you're tired, in how they handle your silence, in how they trust you, especially when they're scared. But for Lily's boyfriend, trust wasn't something to offer. It was something to test, with smoke and mirrors, and excuses dressed in concern. That's the thing about emotional manipulation. It rarely shows up looking like the villain. It shows up wearing cologne, holding flowers, calling itself love. One of our viewers wrote in after hearing Lily's story. She said her boyfriend once asked her to share her location 24/7. "Just so I don't worry," he said. "I get anxious when I can't see where you are." She agreed at first, because who wouldn't want to make their partner feel safe? But then it became, "Why did you stop at that store? Why were you home 10 minutes later than usual? Why were you near your ex's neighborhood?" And soon, her life wasn't hers anymore. She wasn't living, she was explaining. That's not care. That's surveillance dressed as love. That's insecurity disguised as intimacy. And that's what Lily was starting to smell, too. Because sometimes, the biggest red flags come wrapped in roses. They don't yell, they whisper. They say things like, "I'm just looking out for you," while slowly, quietly pulling the strings. And Lily had spent enough time dancing on puppet strings. She was starting to feel the knots, and she was almost ready to cut them loose. By this point, Lily's story might feel familiar, not just in the details, but in the feeling. That quiet confusion, that slow erosion of certainty, that tug-of-war between maybe I'm just being sensitive and no, something's not right. That's not just a bad relationship, that's psychology at work. And unfortunately, it's more common than we like to admit. Let's name it. Gaslighting is when someone makes you question your own reality. You say, "That hurt me." They say, "You're imagining things." You remember them yelling. They say, "I never raised my voice." You walk away not just hurt, but unsure if you should be hurt. Love bombing comes first. It's the flowers, the big declarations, the "I've never felt this way before" on day 3. It feels magical until it starts to feel like obligation. Because the more they pour into you, the more they expect in return. Not love, loyalty, not partnership, possession. And then there's hoovering, named after the vacuum because it sucks you right back in. You break up, you draw boundaries, you finally breathe again. And then ding. "I miss you. No one has ever understood me like you do." Suddenly, you're back. Not because they changed, but because they know exactly which version of themselves to use, just long enough to make you doubt the exit sign. These tactics don't come with warning labels. They come with compliments, with tears, with inside jokes and remember when stories. They come wrapped in nostalgia and scented like redemption. And yet, they leave you emptier every time. One of our viewers commented on a past episode. "He used to leave his jacket at my place on purpose, just so he had an excuse to drop by. Even after we broke up, I thought it was sweet. It took me a year to realize I was being hoovered." Another wrote, "My ex used to tell me I was overreacting so often, I started recording our arguments, just to prove to myself I wasn't crazy." These aren't just terms in a textbook, they're real experiences. And if you're nodding right now, it's not just you. So tell us, have you ever been gaslit, love-bombed, or hoovered without realizing it at the time? Share your story anonymously through the pinned link. Your voice might help someone else name what they're feeling. And for every 1,000 views, we donate $1 to support survivors of emotional manipulation. Because clarity is the first step to freedom. To balance out Lily's story, we wanted to speak to a couple who have actually done it. Not the whirlwind honeymoon phase, not the performative perfection for Instagram, but real, durable, honest love. So we called up Marcus and Janine. They've been together for 20 years, not without ups and downs, not without hurt, but with trust, real trust, at the center. We asked them point blank, "Did you ever feel the need to test each other's loyalty?" Marcus didn't even hesitate. "No, if I have to test her, I'm already assuming she'll fail. That's not trust, that's paranoia." Janine laughed and added, "I don't need to know where he is every second. I just need to know who he is, and that's never changed." They talked about space, about the importance of breathing room, how real love doesn't mean constant updates or 24/7 access. It means choosing someone again and again, even when life makes it hard. And truth, not forced honesty, not interrogations, but openness because you want to share, not because you're scared not to. Janine said something that stuck with us. "If someone only tells you the truth when they're afraid you'll leave, that's not honesty. That's survival." Then Marcus offered the mic drop line we'll never forget. "If you have to test me, you don't deserve the answers." That's the difference. Trust isn't earned through stress tests or tricks. It's earned through consistency, through showing up when no one's watching, through choosing someone not just to love but to believe in. And Lily, she never got that. But hearing Marcus and Janine, she realized it wasn't too much to want. It just wasn't something you could find with someone who needed you to pass before they let you stay. "If you have to test me, you don't deserve the answers." Lily didn't slam a door. She didn't scream or throw a glass or post one of those vague Instagram stories with black backgrounds and white font. She wrote a Reddit post. It was short, clear, and devastatingly honest. "He kept testing me until I tested positive, for anger." That line hit different, not because it was clever, but because it was true. This wasn't about one lie or one prank or one night. It was about the slow, constant erosion of safety, of being loved on the condition that you keep proving you're worthy of it. And when Lily finally brought it up, calmly, directly, he didn't apologize. He didn't even argue. He just blocked her, just like that, as if all those months meant nothing. As if the only role she was ever meant to play was the experiment subject. And maybe that's the part that hurt most. Not the lies, but the quiet realization that she'd spent so much energy trying to earn a trust that should have been freely given. Here's the lesson. Love doesn't come with a final exam. If it does, you're not in love. You're in training. MC reflection. She didn't leave because he lied. She left because she had to ask permission to trust him. And if you have to ask permission to feel safe, to be honest, to exist without being tested, you're not in a relationship. You're in a trap with good lighting. Lily didn't fail his test. He failed the simplest one. Can you love without control? What comes next? That's where Lily surprises us all, because she didn't just walk away. She walked wiser, and she's not the only one, you'll see. Lily used to think the Bluetooth thing was the beginning of the end. But it was. It was just the first time the relationship said something out loud she hadn't been ready to hear. And now, months later, no contact, no closure, no apology, she doesn't want the title anymore. Not girlfriend. Not future wife. Not even the one that got away. Because titles are empty when you have to earn them by jumping through emotional hoops. She put it best herself. I don't need to be called wife if it means passing a new loyalty test every week. That line doesn't come from bitterness. It comes from clarity, because real love doesn't treat trust like a trophy. It offers it like a gift. Freely, quietly, and without a scoreboard. You shouldn't have to be monitored, measured, or manipulated to feel safe. You shouldn't need to prove your heart just to be held by someone else. MC reflection. Sometimes walking out isn't about being strong. It's about being done. Done asking for basic decency. Done trying to decode mixed signals dressed as affection. Done being tested instead of trusted. Sometimes walking out is how you choose yourself. Lily didn't leave because she stopped loving him. She left because she started loving herself more. And in doing so, she gave all of us something to remember. Being loved shouldn't feel like a performance. And trust isn't a prize. It's a decision. Let's talk about what happens when you stop trying to be chosen and finally choose you. In the end, it was never about Lily failing him. It was about him never believing he deserved to be loved without a test. Because people who constantly test your love, they're not looking for connection, they're looking for control. And deep down, they're terrified of being truly seen and still chosen. Let's be honest, you don't test something you trust. You don't trick someone you respect. And you don't build love by treating it like a pop quiz. Here's what we've learned. People who test your loyalty aren't measuring your heart. They're compensating for the hole in their own. The real red flag isn't the question they ask you. It's the fact that they don't ask it honestly. They stage it. They manipulate it. They trap you into reacting. And somehow they call that communication. But love isn't built on traps. It's built on truth. And if your relationship feels like you're constantly trying to pass something, then you're not in love, you're in school, with no graduation day in sight. Quote it, tattoo it, whisper it to your past self if you have to. If your love story begins with suspicion, maybe it's time to rewrite the plot. Because the best relationships don't need hidden tests. They need open hands, and a partner who looks at you and says, I trust you because I choose to. So what do we take away from Lily's story? That a Bluetooth name can be a breadcrumb. That a joke might not be a joke. That love, when wrapped in control, stops feeling like love at all. We've seen how gaslighting hides behind laughter. How fake vulnerability becomes emotional surveillance. How some people test your loyalty, not because they love you, but because they don't love themselves enough to believe they're worth trusting. But we've also seen what real trust looks like. It looks like space. It looks like truth. It looks like choosing someone every day without needing to trap them into staying. And Lily, she didn't walk out broken. She walked out clear. She walked out knowing that love isn't something you have to earn in secret. It's something you build together, in daylight, with your eyes open. Now it's your turn. Have you ever been tested without knowing? Ever had someone set you up just to watch how you'd react? Tell us. Not for drama, not for clicks, but because stories like yours make others feel seen and strong. Drop it in the comments or share it anonymously through the pinned link. We'll read some of them in upcoming videos. Because someone out there needs your voice to feel less alone. Story 4. It started with lotion, not a breakup text, not a scandalous DM, not a secret family in Ohio, just lotion. Nora thought it would be funny. She called it the Lotion Man prank. She wrapped herself in a towel, rubbed some moisturizer on her face, and crept into the hallway like a horror movie extra with a skincare routine. Her husband didn't laugh, didn't roll his eyes, didn't even say, "That's weird." He packed a bag and left. No warning, no argument, just lotion and a slammed door. But here's the thing, this isn't a story about a joke gone wrong. This is a story about what happens when laughter cracks open the lies. Because the lotion wasn't what broke them. It was the texts, the secret group chats, the friend who knew too much, and a man looking for a way out who just happened to find one covered in cocoa butter. In this video, we're digging into why some people overreact to harmless things because they're hiding something worse. How emotional cheating can wear a better disguise than physical betrayal. The ways we ignore red flags until one tiny moment makes them impossible to miss. And why sometimes the breakup isn't about what happened last. It's about everything that came before. This isn't just Nora's story. It's about anyone who's ever laughed and gotten left. Anyone who's blamed themselves for someone else's guilt. Anyone who thought, maybe I pushed too far, when the truth is, they were already pulling away. And now, we want to hear your story. If you've ever been left over something that wasn't the real reason. If a joke, a look, a moment cracked your world open. Tell us. Use the pinned link in the comments to share your experience, 100% anonymous. And for every 1,000 views, we'll donate $1 to a fund supporting people healing from emotional manipulation and unfair endings. Because your story deserves to be heard. And maybe it's time someone laughed with you, not walked away. Nora didn't expect a reaction, or at least not that reaction. It was supposed to be dumb, silly, harmless. She called it Lotion Man, wrapped herself in a towel, smeared lotion across her cheeks, and tiptoed into the hallway like a ghost with great skin. Ben, her husband, was brushing his teeth. She crept up behind him, made a low growling noise, and whispered, "I've come." To moisturize. Classic bathroom prank, harmless couple stuff. Something to laugh about, maybe text a friend, but Ben didn't laugh. He flinched hard. Then he turned around, grabbed the bottle of lotion, whipped it across the bathroom, and said just one word. Enough. By midnight, his suitcase was packed. By morning, he was gone. That's when it hit her. He didn't leave because of the lotion. He left because the joke caught him in a moment when he could finally justify leaving. Because that's how some people operate. They wait. They hoard resentment in the back of their minds like canned goods for the apocalypse. And then, when the tiniest thing goes wrong, they explode. Not because of what just happened, but because it finally gave them an exit sign. Ever been there? Where you said something small, "Why'd you like her photo?" Or that joke wasn't funny, and suddenly it's World War III. That's not about the moment. It's about the pressure that was already building underneath it. And that's what we're unpacking today. Because Nora thought she cracked a joke, but what she really cracked was the cover story. What came next? Let's just say lotion was the least slippery thing in their relationship. Let's be real, no one actually storms out over a bottle of lotion. Not unless that bottle hit a nerve that was already raw. So why did Ben explode? Was it really the prank? The towel? The whispery "moisturize me"? Or was it something deeper, something he thought he'd hidden well until that exact moment? Sometimes people don't get mad because of what you did. They get mad because they got caught feeling something they weren't ready to face. And that's the thing about guilt, it doesn't like to be joked with, it doesn't laugh along, it flinches, it deflects. It yells, "How could you?" at things that don't deserve volume. Ben wasn't reacting to Nora's prank. He was reacting to being seen, maybe for the first time in months. And when someone's been holding onto secrets, even a joke can feel like a spotlight. There's a word for that: overcompensating. It's what happens when people make mountains out of molehills, not because the molehill is big, but because their conscience is heavier than they can admit. Ever had someone blow up at you for something tiny? Like forgetting to buy almond milk or making a joke that used to make them laugh. You probably walked away wondering, what just happened? But maybe, just maybe, they weren't mad at the almond milk. They were mad at the reminder that something inside them is unsettled. And your words, your prank, your question, your tone, accidentally knocked on the door of their denial. As someone once said, people aren't always mad at the prank. They're mad at the mirrors. And Nora's little joke? It might have reflected a version of Ben he didn't want anyone, especially himself, to see. So the question isn't why he left over lotion. The real question is, what was he trying to avoid by leaving at all? It didn't take long after the breakup for the truth to start bubbling up. But it didn't come from Ben. It came from Kai, Nora's best friend. The brunch buddy. The group chat MVP. The one who always kinda side-eyed Ben, but never said why. Until now. They were sitting on Nora's couch, half a bottle of wine deep, mascara slightly smudged from tears and laughter, when Kai finally said it. I didn't want to tell you this before, but I always thought something was off. Nora blinked, off how? And then the floodgates opened. Kai had seen Ben's messages months ago, not just to one woman, but several. Nothing overtly scandalous, at first. Just some emoji-heavy DMs, a few late-night, "How have you been?" texts to women who didn't exactly scream old friends. And then there was the time Ben asked Kai for advice on how to keep things exciting in marriage while referencing another woman. Not Nora. That was the moment Kai felt the shift. Not a joke. Not harmless curiosity. It was a man laying the groundwork, testing the waters without getting wet. Nora sat in silence, not because she didn't believe it, but because suddenly, so much made sense. The weird energy when she walked in the room. The phone flipped screen down. The defensive tone when she asked, "Who's that?" All those little things she once brushed off as insecurity or overthinking. Now they stacked up like puzzle pieces, and the picture wasn't pretty. She whispered, "Why didn't I see it?" And Kai softly, honestly replied, "Because you were trying to build a life. He was just playing in it." Sometimes the people closest to us hold back the truth, not out of malice, but mercy, because they want to believe in our happiness almost as much as we do. But once the truth comes out, you can't unsee it, and Nora was starting to see everything a little clearer. It's funny how quiet the house gets after someone storms out. You can still feel the echo of their footsteps, the slam of the door, but after that, just silence. And in Nora's case, curiosity. She wasn't looking to start a fire. She just wanted to put one out. That night, she remembered Ben's old phone. He'd upgraded months ago and told her to toss the old one. But Nora, being Nora, never throws anything away, especially not tech with untapped answers. It took 2 tries to guess the passcode. Ben wasn't exactly original. Hint, it was their anniversary. Oof. And once she was in, it all unraveled. 3 women, not one, not a fling, a pattern. Conversations that started friendly, then flirted past the line. Late-night heart emojis, inside jokes, a selfie captioned, "Wish you were here," sent on the same day he told Nora he was slammed at work. And then she found it. A group chat, 4 usernames. One called him King Moist. Another said, "Next time bring the good stuff winking face." It wasn't just flirty, it was explicit, bold, unapologetically non-PG. Nora stared at the screen, heart pounding, not with rage but with recognition. This was what her gut had been whispering about. This was why he left so quickly. The lotion prank didn't offend him, it interrupted him. MC voiceover, dry but razor sharp. And just like that, lotion became the least disturbing part of the night. If this were a movie, this would be the moment the camera zooms in on her face, lit by the cold blue glow of betrayal. The messages scroll slowly on screen. The audience reads them with her. The silence stretches, and in that silence something clicks, because when screenshots speak, you don't need anyone to explain. The truth has a tone of its own. Let's talk about the gray zone, Because not every betrayal shows up wearing lipstick on a collar. Sometimes it's dressed in casual texts, a fire emoji, a you up, a comment on someone's post that says, looking good eyes, and it's not your partner. After scrolling through Ben's messages, Nora wasn't even sure what hurt more, the words themselves, or the fact that they weren't technically cheating. But here's the real question. Where's the line? Is it when they flirt a little for fun? When they hide messages but swear nothing happened? When they go out to dinner with an ex and forget to mention it? What about just following her back? Or liking a few pics, it's harmless? Or venting to someone who just happens to be single and stunning? Some people say cheating starts with physical touch. Others say it starts the moment you'd be embarrassed if your partner saw the screen. So let's make it real. MC asks the audience, what would make you walk away immediately? A flirty joke, a hidden text thread, a secret lunch date? Because the truth is, there's a cultural divide when it comes to betrayal. In some circles, a little secrecy is seen as normal. Just boys being boys, girls being friendly. What they don't know won't hurt them. But in healthy relationships, transparency isn't a burden, it's the baseline. Sneaky honesty isn't honesty at all. And what's considered harmless often depends on who's being harmed. There's a difference between playful and predatory, between private and secretive, between respecting boundaries and looking for loopholes. Nora didn't need a courtroom to prove Ben was guilty. She just needed that feeling in her chest, that drop in her stomach, when she read those texts and thought, if I had done this, he'd be gone. Because sometimes you don't need a label for what it is. You just know what it is. And what it was love. Just when Nora thought the worst was behind her, Kai dropped one more truth bomb. And it wasn't just uncomfortable, it was ugly. They were walking in the park, trying to process everything. And then, in the middle of a sentence about healing and therapy, Kai paused. I never told you this, she said, because I didn't want to add fuel to the fire. But Ben once asked me something. Nora raised an eyebrow. Asked you what? Kai exhaled like someone about to rip off a very sticky Band-Aid. He asked if I'd ever consider a threesome with you. And him. Silence. And then, he said it was just a joke. But it didn't feel like one. It felt like he was testing the waters, seeing how far he could push, how much he could twist before something snapped. Suddenly, everything clicked. The flirty messages, the suggestive comments passed off as just kidding, the strange tension in the room when all three of them were together. Ben wasn't caught off guard by the lotion man prank. He was caught in his own mess, and the prank, it was his exit ramp. He didn't storm out because of some moisturizer. He seized the moment, used it as a shield, and ran because the web he was spinning was starting to tighten. MC drops the line, cool and cutting. He wasn't shocked by the prank. He was relieved to have an excuse. Because sometimes, people don't wait to get caught. They create chaos just to have a reason to leave. And that's the difference between someone who wants to fix what's broken and someone who was never planning to stay once the mirror cracked. Looking back, Nora realized the signs were never subtle. They were there, blinking like hazard lights. The phone always face down. The sudden work trips with no return selfies. The way he'd changed the subject when she asked simple questions, like, are we okay? But she didn't press, not because she didn't notice, but because she didn't want to notice. I thought if I just loved him enough, she said quietly, he'd stop needing anyone else. That's the thing about love. It doesn't make you stupid, it just makes you hopeful. So hopeful, sometimes, that you rewrite reality just to stay in the story. Psychologists call it the emotional investment fallacy. The more you've poured into something, the harder it is to walk away, even when it's leaking everywhere. It's why people stay in jobs that drain them, friendships that guilt them, relationships that hurt more than they heal, because walking away feels like admitting you were wrong. Like throwing away all the effort, all the memories, all the maybe next week will be better. Nora wasn't blind. She was exhausted from squinting at red flags and convincing herself they were sunsets. She told herself she was fighting for love, but what she was really doing was fighting herself. Her intuition, her peace, her worth, and she's not alone. In fact, when we asked our audience, someone shared this. I thought I was saving our relationship. Turns out I was just bleeding slowly, hoping he'd notice. That's the quiet tragedy of toxic love. You don't feel it all at once. You feel it a little less every day, until you can't remember what real love even feels like. But Nora's story didn't end there. Because eventually, even the most tired hearts wake up. And when they do, they don't just leave. They reclaim. Ben never texted, never called, no long email. No late night, I messed up voicemail with sad music playing in the background. He just vanished. And at first, Nora waited. Not because she wanted him back, but because part of her still believed she deserved a reason. An explanation. At the very least, a weak apology she could roll her eyes at and move on from. But it never came. And strangely, that silence, it set her free. Because when someone lies that easily, their apology is just another performance. Another version of reality you have to question, rewind, analyze. Instead, Nora got something better than closure. She got clarity. She didn't have to wonder anymore. She didn't have to defend him to her friends, or decode his texts, or make excuses for the nights he was too tired to talk. It was done. Not in a dramatic crash, but in a slow crumble that had started long before the lotion ever hit the floor. MC says it best: you don't need closure from liars, you need peace from the truth. And the truth was this: lotion didn't break the marriage. A prank didn't destroy their trust. It just exposed how little of it was left. Because the real end of a relationship doesn't always come with yelling or cheating or some big betrayal. Sometimes it ends when the truth finally gets louder than your excuses. And in that silence, Nora heard herself again, and she listened. Nora used to replay that night on a loop. The towel, the whisper, the slam of the door. She'd lie awake thinking, did I push him too far? Was that the moment I lost him? But healing has a way of rewriting the script. One day, she stopped blaming the prank and started recognizing the pattern. She said it softly, like someone who'd finally made peace with her own reflection. I used to think I lost him because of a joke. Now I know I only lost the illusion. Because real love doesn't shatter over laughter. It doesn't walk out at the first hint of vulnerability. And it sure as hell doesn't use lotion as a scapegoat for months of deceit. The truth? Ben didn't leave because of the prank. He left because he was already gone. Emotionally checked out. Morally absent. Spiritually hiding behind sarcasm and half-truths. MC closes it with one line that lands like a quiet thunder. If someone leaves because you laughed, maybe they were never there when you cried. The camera fades out on a single bottle, still sitting on the counter, untouched. But Nora, she's not in the frame anymore. She walked forward, no apologies, no explanations. Just a woman who finally saw what was always true. Lotion didn't break them, truth did, and that was the best thing that could have happened. Sometimes it's not the big betrayal that ends it, it's the small thing, the joke, the question, the moment you laughed. And they didn't. Have you ever been left over something that seemed ridiculous? A prank, a comment, a silence they claimed was too loud. Maybe that moment was what broke you. Maybe it just revealed what was already broken. We want to hear your asterisk story. If you've ever walked away or been walked out on because of something too small to matter, tell us. Use the pinned link in the comments to share your story anonymously. We'll feature real voices, real heartbreak, real strength in future videos. Because the smallest moments can hold the biggest truths. And for every 1,000 views on this video, we're donating $1 to organizations supporting survivors of emotional manipulation and unfair breakups. You watch, we give, we grow together. Coming up, right arrow when the joke was just the trigger, asterisk. Right arrow, red flags in funny packaging, asterisk. Because love should survive a laugh. And if it does, maybe it wasn't love at all. 5 stories, 5 truths revealed. In the end, we learn it was never about the lotion, the ring, or the Bluetooth speaker. Those were just the cracks that exposed a foundation that was already rotten. Betrayal rarely introduces itself. It whispers through a car stereo, on a paper plate, in the sparkle of a diamond meant for someone else. It doesn't scream. It just waits for a moment you're not paying attention to show you the truth. And now we want to hear from you. Which of these 5 stories hit home for you? Have you ever had your own lotion man moment? A truth accidentally exposed by something ridiculously small? Especially, let's talk about Lily's story, story number 3. Have you ever felt like you were being tested in a relationship instead of being trusted? Share your story in the comments below. Or, if you want to remain anonymous, use the pinned link. We read every single one, because your voice has power. And here's our promise to this community. For every 1,000 views this series gets, we will donate $1 to organizations that support survivors of emotional manipulation and betrayal. Your view isn't just a number. It's support. So, if these stories resonated with you, please like this video, share it with a friend who might need to hear they're not alone, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. Because we're already compiling the stories you're sending us, and you won't want to miss our next series where we'll explore what happens when the betrayal doesn't come from a partner, but from inside your own family. Thank you for listening. Remember, you are not alone, and you never were.